All right, welcome one and all to the Cosmic Comic Nation, powered by Comic Con Radio. I'm your host, Tom Torme, and my next guest is a New York Times best-selling author and illustrator behind more than 40 books for young readers, including his wildly popular Lunch Lady graphic novels, select volumes of the Star Wars Jedi Academy series, and Hey Kiddo, which was a National Book Award finalist. His new young adult graphic novel, Sunshine, is set to hit shelves on April 18th, and it is my honor to welcome Jarrett Krosoczka to the Cosmic Comic Nation. I got your name right. I got my name right.
The honor and pleasure is all mine, Tom. I'm glad to
Thank
chat with you. And you can pop up on my TikTok feed, so this is like an interactive
you. Oh,
FYP.
that's amazing to hear. Yeah, I know. I love it. That, and what a great way to communicate with people. I found. I'm sure, like you, maybe a lot of other people during the pandemic, I kind of turned to social media as an extension of a hobby, an extension of my passion, and was able to interact with so many amazing artists and creators. It really is it's a new world, and it's amazing what we can do now. It used to be that
Really,
yeah,
no, Gina, my wife and I, we would say, TikTok makes you love everyone you'll never meet, while Facebook makes you hate everyone you've ever known.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you can't post much on Facebook without being attacked for something, or it's strange how people. And I guess it's just the way the world works. Sometimes people will. I could post, hey, what Batman's favorite soup is, and within minutes it turns into a political discussion. Political.
Fight, yeah. I mean, and likewise, it's hard not to see, people that you might have fond memories of, and you're like, oh, you went down some dark
Oh yeah.
rabbit holes of conspiracies.
Oh yeah.
How did
Yeah.
that happen?
Facebook is a dangerous, dangerous thing. Uh, but I have found, just like social media, that for many people, art, comic books, it's a healthy form of escapism. I always tell people I haven't gone to therapy yet because I still bag and board my own comics, and that's very therapeutic to me. The sound, the feel, I don't know, you just kind of lose yourself in it. But for you, art has was more than really escapism. Uh, and you stated that art had really saved your life. And is
Yeah.
that something you would mind elaborating on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, making art was a lifeline for me, as was reading comics. And my mother was addicted to heroin, and so because of that, I was raised by her parents. And so my grandparents raised me, and they were really loving people, uh, but they also grew up during the Great Depression, so they didn't have the foresight to understand that therapy is really important to a person.
Right.
And they had the mindset of, just pick up and move on, and don't look back. And
Yep.
my grandfather would say, if you focus on the ghosts of your past, they'll haunt you for the rest of your life. And I found the opposite to be true. Like, you have to face those ghosts in order for them to go away. And so, because I didn't have any sort of therapy sessions, what I had empty sketchbooks. And those empty sketchbooks, sometimes I was just writing my own superhero comics, and I was able to escape into that world I created. When I was a teenager and I was really processing a lot of the anger and frustration that I had, I would work through those darker thoughts that I had, and I share a lot of those sketches in the book. Hey Kiddo, like, whenever you see the Jarrett character draw, you see the artwork that I made at that time. So when I say art saved me, like, it helped me get through a really difficult time, in which there were times where that depression was so heavy and
Hmm.
so thick. I didn't even sometimes didn't want to exist in the world. But creating was so therapeutic for me, and it still is, just despite the fact that making art is my vocation. I sometimes still have to remind myself that let's just make some art, just for the joy of making art,
Right.
and
Right.
not because it's a deadline, not because you need content for social media, but just to make art.
And that's a really healthy way to look at it too. And I do appreciate that you do encourage people to kind of revisit their past and learn from it, and help yourself grow, and love yourself. And that's
Yeah.
such an important thing that I don't think not enough people really take the time to appreciate themselves and what they bring. Did art did the way people looked at your art play a role in that? Like, as you're drawing and people are saying, "Hey, what's Jarrett drawing?" Did that have any impact on your self worth?
Yeah, oh, totally. It was so empowering, I wasn't an athletic kid. I didn't belong to any sports teams, so I didn't have any camaraderie in that sense. Um, but I was always sort of the class artist, and that attention that I got, like, I fed off of it,
Right.
it, like I said, it empowered me. It made me feel special. It made me feel like I had some value to offer. Um, and in high school, it's how I made friends. Like I would draw silly pictures of my teachers when their back was turned, and like that's how I befriended so many people once I got to high school.
And I think that also led to you, if I'm not mistaken, getting onto like the school newspaper, correct? Right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah. I was hired to be the cartoonist for the school newspaper, based on one small decision that my English teacher saw that I had been causing a ruckus, and he kicked me out to the hallway. And I was not a kid who got in trouble as a kid. I was pretty timid. And he saw, and he's like, let me see what the source of this commotion was. And it was a drawing of him. And he could have, like, his pride could have been like, I'm sending you to the principal's office. You're going to be suspended for a week, and that'll, forever be on your record. And instead, like, he connected me to the faculty member who ran the school newspaper. And
that's
that again was like, wow, like I could write and draw these stories, and I could entertain people that I didn't even know
mhm.
if my work was printed and published. So that was wildly empowering to me.
Oh yeah, and what a small thing to make a huge difference to in a child's life. And I did actually see the picture. It wasn't bad. It was it was pretty complimentary of your teacher. All things considered, what a young man's mind can do.
Yeah, what I could have been capable of. Yes, exactly. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what? All things considered, I don't know. I would have taken it. I was like, hey, you know what? I'd frame it. I'd put it up on a wall. I'm, I'm sure he regrets not having it now. I'm sure, but
Yeah, he let me keep it, and that's in the book.
oh yeah, right, right. So that's a pretty cool thing. Uh, in reference to uh your grandparents and kind of raising you, it seems like, and especially from what I read in Hey Kiddo and what I read in Sunshine, uh, they loved you. They loved you undeniably with everything, every fiber of their being, but they had that trouble showing it. Uh, and as you said, it's kind of over time, speaking to people, you've kind of developed your own way of looking at the world. How has that kind of impacted you in your own life? Does that impact the way you are interacting with young people today?
The way my grandparents acted,
Yes.
yeah, like my grandmother would sort of cut you down to so that you would stay close to her, right? So she wanted all of her kids to live across the street and next door. And so when it came time for me to say I want to go to college for art, she really just tried to cut me down of like, this is a dream that's not going to happen for you, so don't even bother. um I don't know per se that affects how I talk to kids. I mean, I think what really um helped me interact with my young readers is my time as a camp counselor.
Right.
So
Okay.
starting when I was 16, I worked at a camp for children with cancer. I volunteered a week, and I did that the next year. And then every summer between college years, I would go to this other camp called the Hole of the Wall Gang Camp, which had a very similar mission. And I worked at that camp for 6 summers. And before working at these camps, like, I was so shy, and I was not capable of public speaking. And now, like, a huge part of my job is getting in front of big audiences to give talks, and I don't bat an eye from that. But it started, like, I got over that fear from working at those camps.
Well, the reason I asked is sometimes, even in my own life, I sometimes as I'm even interacting with my students or interacting with my own children, I look back at the past and I look at people that have been players in my life and say, you know what, they may not have been a good example, but to me, they're an example of maybe what not to do.
Sometimes, yeah, right. No, my grandmother's often used expression is if somebody wronged you, was to tell them to go shit in their hat. And so I don't offer that advice to my young readers.
Oh, it's good. That's a good
I
one.
have to my own kids though, right? And not so much in so many ways of saying like you should tell the person that expression, but like to just brush past it and just move forward. And yeah.
So speaking of your time as a counselor, working with Sunshine and the Hole in the Wall gang, that is central to the story of Sunshine.
Yeah. And so originally, and I might not even have mentioned this to you in our email correspondence, but the events of Sunshine, my time working at a camp for kids with cancer and the experiences I had there was a chapter in an early draft of Hey Kiddo.
Oh, no, I wasn't aware.
And it was a chapter that was like 100 pages long in what was then a 400-page book, right? And so it was like a quarter of the book. And so my editor gave me this key piece of advice, which was, look, if there were ever to be a second book, I think it would be about the subject. But as you're writing this memoir, and he kept calling it your first memoir, he said, don't write this book like it's going to be the only time you'll ever have to write about your life. And through that experience of writing that first memoir, you realize, how multifaceted we all are as human beings. Hey Kiddo is about me being the son of an addict and being an artist. And that's a fraction of who I am,
Understand.
yeah. And so that chapter became one page in Hey Kiddo, just one page, because I did have to explain to the reader my motivation for then wanting to seek out my birth father, who I had never met. And so yeah, like conceivably you could read Hey Kiddo up to page, I think it's page 266 or so. I'm gonna have to commit that page to memory. And then read all of Sunshine and go back and read the last 80 pages of Hey Kiddo, if you're a stickler for a timeline.
Oh, and I am. Continuity is important to me. So that's actually a really clever way to look at it. And I'm sure anyone who has Hey Kiddo and is going to be picking up Sunshine, that's an excellent way to read it. But I mean, I don't think I haven't cried reading a book in a long time. And I think at several points reading Sunshine, was openly weeping, doing just it really is so heartfelt and so emotional. Uh, and for anyone who is picking up this book, is that this podcast, this video will be coming out around the same time that the book debuts on April 18th. And uh, I hope when you do read it, you'll be reading it with a tissue box nearby. But it really does speak so much to your character. It does speak so much to your experiences. Would you mind maybe just elaborating on the inspiration for I from a publishing standpoint, that it's fascinating to know that could have been a very large section of Hey Kiddo, but now it functions on its own. But what did get you involved in working with Sunshine and then with the Hole in the Wall gang?
Well, my name was pulled from a hat. Really, it
Yeah.
comes down to that. And so it was a tradition at my high school to send a small group of seniors up to Maine to work at this camp. And more students always wanted to go than the high school could send. So I believe they were able to send about 30 students a year. I forget, because there are multiple sessions. There's some in the spring and some in the fall, and it changed as the camp grew. So all that said, about 5 times the amount of students sign up that can actually go. And they pulled names from a hat. And, based on the roster of all of the students that went, I firmly believe that they pulled names from a hat, because it wasn't all AP students.
Mhm.
There were some students that definitely spent a lot of time in in detention, right? And so, oftentimes we're asked to.
You willfully had you volunteered for this. You wanted to be a part of this.
You wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, you wanted to be a part of this program. And so my name got picked, and I went, and I fell in love with the work. I've just the idea of being able to give
Mhm.
kids a sort of experience of being a quote unquote normal kid. Because there's something too about, like, when you go through childhood trauma, there's something you understand about yearning for childhood when you're a child, right? There's something really heavy about that. So there's something, I guess, I really identified with that, although our plights were very different. And um, so I signed up independently after I graduated high school. Me and a couple friends from that first group, we went back, and I remember it was the day after high school graduation, and so many people like, I'm not gonna give up I'm gonna be so hungover the day after high school graduation or whatever. And I'm like, no, like we're going, like we're waking up at 5 a.m. and we're driving up to Maine to make it for volunteer orientation. And then from there, so then I learned about this place called the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp, and it's most famously known as the camp founded by the late actor Paul Newman.
Oh,
And
okay.
the thought of getting to do this work for the full summer, and that would be my job. So like, one, like I needed a summer job, but also like I didn't want to move back home. I graduated high school at 17, and I never lived in my home again, other than holiday breaks, because I would be at college during the year, and then I was gone from June 1st till August 26th working at the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp. And it, became a surrogate family that I could jump into as I was trying to get some distance from the family that had caused me a significant amount of trauma in
Right.
my childhood.
I did not. Well, first of all, that explains one line in Sunshine where your grandmother remarks about saying hi to Paul Newman, or I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand. Now I understand. The other is that you had mentioned that kind of shared trauma, kind of that shared experience where you couldn't. Where on one hand you have these amazing warriors in these children fighting against cancer, but then even amongst the counselors, you have this connection where you realize at one point that they're not they're not living the perfect life that on the outside it seemed.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes, and that's just it. There's something about, a residential sleepover experience in which it's that, 10:30 at night where everyone's about to go to bed, where you feel safe about opening up. And what's interesting though is I recently read an article, I believe it was in the Washington Post, about how the time if you're a parent of a teenager, the best time to speak to them is when they come into your room right as you're about to fall asleep. And that's when they open up. So when I was at the camp with these peers, and it was very much a breakfast club situation, right? You had like the stoner, you had the jock, you had the theater goth, like the group of us could not have been any more different from one another. And then lo and behold, that you take like the jock who seems to have the jock has it all.
mm,
Um, well, his home life isn't great either, and I think it goes to show you that you never know what pain and difficulty other people are going through. You never know.
and you did a fantastic job kind of relaying that through the book, and it really is touching and poignant. Uh, so the experience that you walked away from has to be, and it shows in the book, a life altering experience. What kept you going back session after session?
I just loved the work. I loved the goofiness of it, the
Mhm.
joy of it, because it is such a joyous, fun experience that you're crafting and creating. The friendships that I made too, especially the friendships with my peers that I was counselors with, that we basically grew up together
Right.
as counselors, like that was in their wedding, and all those years later.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
you know, we send each other memes every day via Instagram DM, that kind of thing.
That's a true
Uh,
friendship right there. That's a true.
and just met the most remarkable people from all corners of the country.
Right.
You know,
No, that is truly fantastic, and so really inspirational. And I do hope a lot of young people today avail themselves of opportunities like that to really go and make a difference, in not only their life but other people's lives as well. Uh, but you continue to do that because not only through your work, but also you establish a scholarship in Worcester for the Worcester Art Museum
yes.
in honor of your grandparents. How did that come about?
So my grandmother was the first to pass away, and then when my grandfather passed away, uh, you know, if there's anyone out there who's lost both of your parents, there's something really weird about that. Even though I was an adult, I felt sort of orphaned, you know, and I was married with kids, but there was still just like this huge gap in my life. And you know, really, you know, when my grandfather was on his deathbed, just really sitting there with him and really reflecting on how much he did for me and
Okay.
all of the important things he did so that I could be the adult that I became. And you know, one of the most consequential pieces of action he ever took was to send me to classes at the Worcester Art Museum beginning when I was in the 6th grade. The Worcester Public Schools, you know, they had all the budgets got slashed. There was the recession of the late 80s. And then I went from having art once a month to I went from having art once a week to once a month to not at all. And my grandfather saw that as a real problem. And so he started taking me to classes at the Worcester Art Museum. And, you know, he didn't have to second guess the cost. Like he was able to afford the classes. And so he was always really generous with, like, for instance, he grew up with the Boys and Girls Club of Worcester. He was donating to that organization till the day he died. And so I started the scholarship in their name for kids growing up in Worcester who maybe are in a unique familial situation, right? Where maybe they're being raised by their grandparents, maybe they're in foster care, maybe it's an aunt or uncle, and they're being raised by someone else because something happened to their parents, but they might not have the financial means to take classes there, and so that's where that came from. And I've lost track of time of how many years we've done it now.
That's a beautiful.
Several, like it's been well over a decade at this point.
No, that is beautiful. That is beautiful, and it's such an amazing thing that you're doing that and continuing that scholarship. Uh, you don't just stand up though for children. You don't just stand up for families, but when you are uh, a protector of the lunch heroes, the lunch ladies out there. Now, and if anyone knows your work, they know that you have a successful, wildly successful. Which I think I remember reading, and you're going to know more than me. Uh, an adaptation, a film adaptation, animated of Lunch Lady.
Well, Hollywood is a fickle business. You know,
Yes.
I get a contract to get a graphic novel published, and then that graphic novel gets published and printed with my names on it. I've had all in all about 10 different options for various projects, like DreamWorks, Nickelodeon,
Right.
Sony, Universal, Walden Media, and like they've all ultimately fallen apart.
Oh,
And it's like Charlie Brown kicking the football, except I'm pretty confident, you know, we never got to see Charlie Brown grow up, right? So I bet maybe by the time he got to be in his 20s, he kicked that football, right? So I'm still after it. I'm
I
still
think,
after it.
yeah, I think it's
Um,
a touchdown coming for you.
yeah, I'm open. I'm open. Uh, the Lunch Lady series is probably what I'm most well known for. Although, you know, Hey Kiddo probably rivals that. But what's been wild about, again, being on TikTok is that like the first wave of readers I had for Lunch Lady in 2009, 2010
Mhm.
have all found me on there because of the algorithm.
Oh
And
wow.
so
Okay.
here, you know, adults in their 20s with beards being like, "You were my childhood," and
Mhm.
like that is, I can't even put into words how amazing that feels to hear from people.
Right. No, that's pretty. But so that series is wildly successful, right? I mean, you've touched the lives of potentially thousands, millions of people, but you also protect actual lunch ladies. You actually you want us to actually celebrate them, and there's a school lunch hero day for those who work in the schools, and you are
Yeah, I found it. I found it a national holiday. Like that's something you can
excellent,
do. You
right?
just have to do it. Like I had this idea and I made it happen. And It stems back. So the Lunch Lady series itself,
Hmm.
the idea I had for that series came from a chance encounter I had with my actual lunch lady from when I was a kid. My first book was published. This was 2001. I went back to Gates Lane School. You know, I slept at my grandparents' house and I walked to school just like I did all throughout elementary school. And I was there to talk to the students about writing and illustrating, getting my first book published. And I had a chat with Jeannie, and what's wild is she told me about her grandkids, and I never thought of her as a person who existed outside of the
Right.
school,
She didn't
right?
she didn't sleep in the cafeteria? She
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where the series came from. Now, that was 2001. Fast forward to 2009 when the books finally came out. I invited her to the launch event at the Worcester Public Library. And I made a big deal. I gave her artwork, I gave her books, and there was, I don't know, maybe 100 people in the audience that instantly gave her a standing ovation. A lot of generations that she had fed, at the small community school. And a couple years after that, it's about maybe just under 2 years, she passed away.
Mm.
And I attended her wake. And as you do when you get to a wake, even if you've known the person very well, you see all these photos the family puts up in the funeral home. And so there I am. I'm walking in, waiting in line, and there are those photos of this person's life unfolding before me. But I couldn't really ever comprehend or expect or prepare myself for this. But next to her casket was that drawing I'd given her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And her widow, he gave me this huge hug, and he said, "You don't understand what you did for my Jeannie. Like you validated her life's work."
Mhm.
And he said, "Nobody ever thanks the lunch lady." And I had, the book series was growing in popularity. At every school I visited, they would bring in the lunch staff into the programming. And what I saw again and again was the reading teacher admitting, "I didn't know their names
Right.
before this," or
Fair.
the librarian who gave special yellow aprons to the lunch ladies, and the lunch staff were like, "Do we have to give these back?" Like they had never been given any kind of gift before. So that first school lunch hero day, I had, and I still have Jeannie's mask card in my studio, but I had it tacked up to a bulletin board. And as I was thinking about this and processing all of this, I saw that her birthday was the very beginning of May. And I was like, well, that's the time when lunch ladies are going to need a boost, And so I partnered with the School Nutrition Association, and it was, integral that I did because, like I forget what their membership was then. That say if their membership was 500,000, then like 50% of them despise the term lunch lady. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
maybe they go by school nutrition professional or school chef or school cook. The other 50% very passionately loves the term because they look at it as a term of endearment.
Yeah.
And so that's why we didn't call it like lunch lady day. And one, there's lunch dudes, there's
It's true.
non-binary lunch people as well. And so school lunch hero day sort of encompassed everybody, and then plus it makes it fun, right? Because it's like a superhero vibe. And it's like, yeah, it's like a Valentine's Day for lunch staff, basically.
I definitely I've been in schools now. I've been working with the DOE in New York City for 23 years. I have not celebrated this day yet, but something tells me this is going to be the year.
Nice,
I would
nice.
I will spearhead it in my school because I absolutely agree with you. They are really the unsung heroes for the children who arrive from in the early morning to get their breakfast, to lunch, to children who stay in after school to get a supper or dinner. Uh,
Yeah,
Really an unsung. They keep the children. They fuel the children for us. If they weren't doing
yeah.
it would be chaos. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Really,
children can't learn if their bellies are empty. And
oh,
I gotta
absolutely.
tell you, sometimes like I get really weepy um when I see this. So my kids participate in the lunch program, and when like the lunch staff knows like there's going to be a huge winter storm and school's going to be canceled the next day, like my kids come home with a brown paper bag for lunch the next day.
Oh, wow.
And
Mm,
the staff is doing that because they know that some of those kids, like, that's their only source of food.
man,
And
I hear you. I hear you. I wish more people were doing that. And that's super special that they did that. I had a student years ago came to school Monday, weak as anything, and I said, "Hey, would you, you know?" It got to the point where I asked what they had to eat over the weekend, and it was sugar boiled in water.
oh, that poor
Eh,
kid.
Yeah, right. And that was probably
It's
20 years ago,
heartbreaking.
and I'll never forget it. And so when I see children, they're like, "Can I eat?" I'm like, "Absolutely, go right ahead. If you need
Yeah,
anything, let me know." And because
yeah,
as he said, if they're hungry, they're not learning, and it's a
yeah.
shame that so many children have to go through that. It really is.
Yes, it is.
You're an advocate for helping children in so many different ways, whether it's uh, helping get their, in school, but also through your YouTube channel, which I know I see your TikTok, I see your, and it's solid. Your Instagram is amazing stuff, but your YouTube channel I think is just on a completely different level because it makes it not only gives information about you and your work and what you've done, but also you have lessons there, art lessons for students, and you are so accessible through that. Uh, what you really and you've been giving back since you were young. Uh, is that was that the impetus behind the channel as well to keep giving back?
Well, I mean, the channel's developed. I mean, I started a YouTube channel in 2006, but for several years, I looked at more as like a Flickr where you would just load up your videos, right? And I would have book trailers, and I've always been a tech head, and I've always been trying to figure out like how might I be able to use technology to bring a deeper understanding or appreciation of my books or different experience, and you know, um, and so I started building up the YouTube channel a little bit more before we thought there'd be a pandemic. We didn't even understand. Like the pandemic was a thing of science fiction movies, right?
Right.
And so my New Year's resolution in January of 2020, and I shouldn't say resolution. I make a New Year's goal every year, not like one goal. Like what can I achieve? And I said I want to do more webcasting. I started webcasting to schools in 2011 and doing Skype visits. And and so I said, well, the only way that I can achieve that is if I carve out a space that's just for webcasting. And so that's where I am now. Like I'm speaking to you from like my audiobook podcasting booth, but on the other side of this room is where I do all of my YouTube stuff.
Mm.
And so I was going live on Facebook every week. I was going live on YouTube a couple times a month for schools. And then so when the pandemic hit, I my last event was in Pittsburgh, and coincidentally, my hotel was across the street from where Mr. Rogers filmed his show.
Oh wow.
And so I had on March 13th of 2020, I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch a ride to get to the airport, and just nervous as all hell. Like the day before was the day the NBA closed down, and Disney World and Broadway closed down, and I was terrified on so many levels. And so um, I saw that, just like that's the door he walked to work. He walked through every day to go to work. It's like a spiritual thing. And
Oh yeah.
um, and then I was sitting at the airport, just frantically scrolling social media because I wanted to fill my mind with other thoughts and everything. And I had a friend who had pulled her kids before they called it, and she had this little whiteboard of like how we're gonna organize our day, and then at 2 p.m. we'll do art class. And I thought, like I could do art class for kids during this. So I was like, hey everyone, Friday night I said, hey, on Monday at 2 p.m. I'm going to be live doing these live I'll teach your kids how to draw, and I'll do it every day at 2 o'clock for the 2 weeks, and then we'll go back to normal. and then
Yeah. That normal never came.
and normal never came. And then I did my live show for like daily for like 3 months.
Mm.
And there were kids who were like really families that were really depending on it. And then that eventually became, what it is now, where I give lessons in shorter chunks of time than these long live YouTube videos, because we needed to fill time. We needed
Right.
to tap dance to entertain the kids.
It really is a great channel, and if anyone out there is watching, if you haven't subscribed to it, definitely, especially for the younger guys, there's so much to learn, and any aspiring artist can learn a lot. Actually, that kind of brings me to where I wanted to go next, really, because I was blessed enough to be able to speak to writer and artist Art Baltazar, and he spoke about that he doesn't necessarily make books for children. He makes books that children enjoy,
Yeah.
but people of all ages can enjoy. So oftentimes you're going to hear, I'm sure you have, uh, you straddled with titles like young adult or children's books, but really, I think all ages may be, in my opinion. I'm not sure which one you prefer, but I think all ages suits like art's work, and it may suit yours because I'm 44 years old, and as I said, reading Sunshine, enjoyed every second of it, and smiled and laughed and cried. And are there any kind of difficulties that go along with those titles? Any challenges into creating work that spans multiple demographics?
Well, I'm conscientious of that on my YouTube channel because YouTube is like the one platform that young kids go on untethered, right? And so, um, I keep in mind when I'm posting like the YouTube shorts, like what would I be okay with my 6-year-old or 10-year-old seeing, you know? So I have like the trailer for Hey Kiddo. I might talk about the drug addiction, but I'm not going to go deep into the more intense aspects of it as I might on say TikTok or Instagram.
Right.
So that's the space in which I'm conscientious of it. Now, I was known for writing lighthearted, fun, action-packed Lunch Lady books and Jedi Academy. So when Hey Kiddo was published, I was really also conscientious, as was my publisher, to signal to readers that this was not for young kids, you know, and that's why we added the subtitle, how I lost my mother, found my father, and dealt with family addiction, to sort of signal
Sure. Yeah, that's
this
very
isn't
clear to
gonna
see.
be this isn't gonna be lighthearted.
Right.
And I don't censor anything. Obviously, my grandmother cursed like a sailor, and if you know, you've got a mom who's addicted to heroin, there's some stuff that's happening. So, I've just always been hyper aware of, how I talk about the books, right?
Hmm.
And what is right. And Sunshine is definitely more accessible for a younger audience because my grandmother's not in it much to drop all the F bombs,
Yeah, right.
but it is about an intense subject just the same.
Absolutely.
So that's something that I'm always aware of. I mean, there have been, you know, movements to ban Hey Kiddo from books over the past couple of years
Oh,
because of the content.
yeah.
And
That's ban it as in from the school or for certain ages, because that debate get. I got to tell you, I've never, as a history teacher, and anyone who looks up, who's ever read anything in history knows that if you're banning books, you're generally on the wrong side of history. So
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. There was a parent in one state who was so upset he went to like every local network affiliate news to be like, this, look at these words, that look at these awful things that are in the book. Like, you can't show them on TV. How are they in the book? And then I think the most heartbreaking one came. There was an eighth grade that it was gonna be like one book, one eighth grade. They were gonna read it. I was gonna zoom in with them. And there was one parent who was like, this book is inappropriate, and the books were literally taken from the kids.
Oh,
Um, so for the most part, the efforts have not been successful, um,
that's good.
but they're out there. But they're out there,
Right.
and
A
it
very
sucks to deal
vocal
with. Like,
minority.
it's not a fun thing to deal with as the author of the material.
Have you found yourself in a position where you felt that you've had to defend Hey Kiddo? Have
I
you
mean,
had?
yeah, I mean, I've had to like defend comics, right? Still to this day, there's still parents or caretakers or teachers
Oh,
or educators who don't want their kids to have comics. And
right.
what's interesting is like when I talk about, oh, like there's this teacher or that teacher didn't want their kids to have comics, like someone outside of our world might be like, oh, well, they'll retire soon. You're like, no, 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 like the veterans know the power of comics. Like, these are freshman teachers who
Mhm.
are fresh out of school who don't yet understand the power of comics reaching their readers.
Yeah, it's such an amazing medium that I think people are just so dismissive of it, and it has been for decades. Where I'd
Yeah.
like to think that in a lot of cases you are seeing. As someone from New York City and who teaches in New York City, I could assure you that in a building like my own, that uh, way of thinking has long since subsided, where not only are comic books celebrated, but they're almost an integral part of almost every curriculum, whether it's science, math,
Yeah.
certainly ELA, because as you mentioned, it's a great way to reach children, to teach them to read, to teach them a higher vocabulary, teach them about sensitive topics that they may not uh, get any other way, and of course, it's also just a lot of fun for them too. And
It's a lot of fun. And I should say on the opposite end of that spectrum, Hey Kiddo is also required reading for some schools, for some
that's true.
grades,
Right. So that's always good to hear too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hopefully, where I'm ending up, Sunshine will be as well, because I definitely think there's so much that children can get out of that book.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
oh
you.
yeah, I think children really do need to see themselves in the literature, and not to crap on Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn, but I
Yeah.
don't think they're resonating too much with our children anymore. And
They didn't resonate. I didn't resonate with them when I was a kid in the 80s. I'm the same age as you. Like,
yeah,
like I didn't understand that world.
and nor you know what, I'm with you. I just never got it. I never got it. He was a humorist, and I guess maybe in the 1800s, late 1800s, that was
It was hilarious then.
right.
Hilarious then.
Yeah, I find that sometimes as I'm watching old films with the students. I'm like, guys, you have to understand this was hysterical. In
Yes.
1920, you would have been on the
Yeah,
floor,
exactly.
rolling around laughing.
So true.
But the challenges are always going to be there, and I'm glad that you are pushing back against it, not just for Hey Kiddo, but also, as you mentioned, the comic book medium in general. It's surprising that even to this day, it's still under attack. What's surprising to hear is that it is the younger teacher. I'm a veteran teacher myself, but I celebrate comics. If you were to take a look at my classroom, you're going to see graphic novels in just every corner of the room, dealing with any range of topics. But I'm surprised to hear that it's the younger ones. I would have
Yeah.
imagined that that kind of mindset had subsided. But
It's still there. It's still
uh,
out there.
uh, are there any plans for you in the upcoming weeks as April 18th rolls around, as Sunshine gets ready to hit the shelves? Are there any plans to promote the book, book tour of any kind?
Oh, I'm ready to buckle up, man. This
Oh
is
boy.
going to be okay. So I'm going to list the cities,
Okay.
and then you could go to studiojjk.com to find out any of the details. So we're going to lead here in my hometown of Northampton, Massachusetts, birthplace of the Ninja Turtles.
Nice.
Then
Which
Houston,
are you a
Texas.
fan of, right? You're a big fan of Ninja Turtles
Oh
Transform.
my God, yeah,
Oh yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
fantastic.
Um, so Northampton, Mass, Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, St. Louis, Missouri, Atlanta, Georgia, Washington, D.C., just outside of Baltimore, Maryland, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Chicago. I have something in Eastern Mass. And then I think there are a few other things that might get added to the mix this spring.
Well, hopefully New York City, hopefully you get the added.
I hope
Very.
so too. Publishers rarely set things up in New York City because there's always so much going on in the city. They can never get a crowd for authors.
I would be part of the crowd. I'll tell you that.
Okay, thank you.
I would definitely be part of the crowd. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind. I generally like to ask people if they wanted to play a quick game, usually based
I
on
love
their
it.
work. Oh, great! And I'm an '80s guy. I love a good crossover. I love to see. I still like the Incredible Hulk when he met Daredevil and Thor, and I still like those old shows. So
I still loved when like Yogi Bear met and like Snagglepuss were on the
yes,
train together, on Saturday morning. Like that was like they knew each other. I love that. Yeah.
great. And as an amazing author who's created an amazing character, and anyone out there who has not read a Lunch Lady book, they are so whimsical. They're action packed. They're a lot of fun. And I was wondering if I could toss something out, as someone who
Okay.
not only dishes out justice, but she dishes out lunch as well, and how she would react to interacting with other fictional characters.
Okay.
All right.
I love this.
So let's, and we coincidentally, we just mentioned them. How do you think the lunch lady would interact with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Oh, she would feed them pizza. Like she would like they would I think she would really vibe with the turtles.
I
She would
agree.
absolutely vibe with them.
Little action there, little
Yeah, they're
little lunch.
they it's a strong sense of justice and pizza day.
I can picture them being wowed by not only her cooking ability, but also by her fighting style.
I think now I want to make that book.
That's, you while you're in the hometown of
Yeah.
Turtles, that's the best place. Uh, how about Lunch Lady and Spider Man?
Well, I mean, like as Spider-Man, again, they're on the same side of justice.
Mhm.
As Peter Parker, she would want to take care of him.
I can
She
picture.
She would be a maternal figure for Peter Parker,
Nice.
and she would think Spider-Man was amazing.
Oh, I like what you did there. I can picture some great scenes of Lunch Lady and Peter Parker interacting.
Yeah, she could be the lunch lady as high school.
That would be great. That'd be great. And let's go a little weirder with that. I'll say, how about, and we'll finish off with Lunch Lady and Garfield.
Oh, lasagna. This whole time I was like, I hope he says Garfield.
Oh, get out of here.
I was like, if it didn't say Garfield, that's a real missed opportunity because she would just cook him lasagna.
That's perfect. I was hoping you would say that. I could just picture him absolutely falling in love with her. Like, John, go away, John. I've got someone else now,
She would come on like one of those first dates that John Arbuckle always had, but it wouldn't work out. Then she would continue to come just to hang out with Garfield.
That's great. Oh, that's perfect. I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about Lunch Lady and Garfield. I think these are potential. I don't know if there's any publishers out there who Marvel definitely. I know you have a good relation with Disney because you had such a great series run with the oh my god, Jedi Academy series.
Jedi Academy, that was so much fun.
Oh, I bet. Well, I didn't. I've been mostly talking about your original work, but I didn't really get a chance to talk too much about Star Wars Jedi Academy. But if you wouldn't mind, just as we kind of wind down,
yeah.
That?
Well, so Jeffrey Brown was the first a cartoonist for the original trilogy of Jedi Academy. He wanted to move on to other things, and the editors at Scholastic and Lucasfilm were looking for a new graphic novelist cartoonist to write new books. And the nephew of one of the editors was a huge Lunch Lady fan.
Oh, so
the editor saw that Lunch Lady book and reached out to me, and I got to play in that playground. I get to write lines for Yoda and draw him, and I did 6 books in all, so 2 separate trilogies. And I'm also now part of the I'm one of the artists writers on from a certain point of view for the 40th of Return of the Jedi. So
oh wow,
yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun. I took one scene, reimagined it as from a different point of view of a different character, and I love that. It's so much fun to work with that kind of stuff.
I bet. As an '80s kid, right now you get to play in the Star Wars sandbox. That's a cool thing.
Yes.
I am extremely appreciative of your time. I am humbled by your kindness and your generosity and how much you gave back as a teenager and how much you continue to give back to your community and just give to the world in general. And I really wanted to take a moment to just thank you for your time and tell you how much from the bottom of my heart I truly do appreciate it.
Well, Tom, I appreciate your kind words, and I will tuck that away for days when I'm feeling really down and thinking, is anything worth it? Because you have those down days too, and I appreciate you and everything you're doing for your students and for having this platform and for being able to have conversations like this and amplify them. So I appreciate you as well.
Wow, that's a lot of appreciation going on. That's good. That's great. It's just that you really just absolutely made my day. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, man. You made mine as well.
I appreciate that, guys. Everybody, this has been Jarrett J. Krosoczka. He is the author of Sunshine, which is coming out on April 18th. Hey, Kiddo, and about 40 other fantastic books that if you don't have in your home, in your classroom library, you absolutely should. I've been Tom Torme. This was the Cosmic Comic Nation. And until next time, be well and stay safe, everybody. Have a great night.